Hello and welcome along to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. Welcome along. It's always a thrill to welcome some very, very special guests who we've known for a long time. One such man is the fabulous Alex Scott. How are you, Alex?
I'm extremely well, Andrew. You're looking extremely well yourself, I have to say.
Yeah, you had to because it's true. I know, it's always a thrill. So, my merry friend, what have you been up to since I last saw you in Scott's restaurant, no less?
Yes. It seems an awful long time ago. I think it was probably well over a year ago, maybe 18 months ago. But in that time, you know me from a combination of backgrounds, some media, some entrepreneurial work, some charity work, and some broadcasting work and music work. So over the last year or so, I've really been concentrating on music. One of the things I do, I'm increasingly doing, is developing my career as a singer-songwriter. And to that end, I've been doing a lot of writing, playing, production, and some philanthropic work.
Easy for you to say.
Well, it's Friday afternoon. I haven't had my first glass of wine yet. So
Well, that's a relief as well. But it is, I mean, talking, as I say, I have known you go through all sorts of stages and all sorts of careers. And I'm always fascinated by that sort of phoenix effect, if you like, because you're always reinventing yourself. Why do you think that is?
Because I've got many interests. I've still got a lot of those interests. But once I scratch that particular itch, I move on to something else. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for basically 40 years. And I've moved in different circles. I've moved with different sectors. But the music thing has never gone away. And I've been, I suppose you could call it, a closet writer mainly for many, many years. And I've accumulated a wealth of music, which I've now got up on my music website. And, you know, it's just now, as I've come to a certain age of maturity, I think it's time to try and do something different, try and do something with the music, because it is my passion, and it is probably where I'll stick with things now going forward for the next few years.
And it really is that sort of balance, isn't it, Alex, between people's profession and people's passions. And when you can combine the two, when you can make money from the things that you're really passionate about, people say technically you never work a day in your life because you have such fun doing it. And that's the best position to be in, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I've been fortunate to be able to balance my work life with my passion, which has always been music anyway. But so those two things have always worked hand in hand. But at the end of the day, I've used my professional experience to be able to enjoy the things that I want to do, which is traveling and taking time out to write and record and so on and so forth. On a slightly more serious note, one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing with such a focus on it at the moment is I've been seriously ill with cancer on 3 previous occasions. The last one being about 5 years ago with prostate cancer, and I've spent some considerable time over the last couple of years, in particular, raising funds for Cancer Research UK. And I've raised tens of thousands of pounds, particularly last year. And as part of that project, I was going to hold a big gala benefit concert in St Albans, near where I live, in Hertfordshire, on April the 18th. Regrettably, that was cancelled due to COVID. And the idea was to get a number of supporting artists who I work with locally, who I support, and they support some of the music ventures that I do. 14 artists playing at this concert to try and raise up to £10,000 for cancer research. And each one of those artists took one of my original songs, and it was being recorded with a view to them playing it at the concert. The concert was cancelled, but I've now managed to complete the album, which is shown thus. I don't know if you can see it particularly.
And sing out, beat up cancer. There you go.
Yeah, and you'll notice the bit at the top, for folks' sake.
Yeah, for folks' sake, absolutely. We love a good pun on this show, I can tell you, Alex. And I'll tell you what,
So,
sometimes people get more pleasure from the titles than they do from the music.
yeah,
But in your case, of course, and I know very much and how disappointing that was, because I was going to come along to your concert in April, and you did lots of publicity because it was March the 23rd that
yeah.
everything got shut down massively. How did that make you feel?
Well, I was obviously disappointed. I'm saddened because a lot of people had spent, given a commitment. You know, it's not really me. I mean, I have to say that the effect on the music industry, the hospitality industry, the travel industry, it's just been devastating. And with the imminent threat of a second wave of this stuff, it's just compounding a problem that's killing the industry. And that's where, you know, we need to try and do as much support, give as much support as possible to get this thing buried as quickly as possible and get people out there, get them invigorated and get them passionate about doing what they do. There is no easy answer. That's the problem, because it strikes me that it's starting in the north with these local lockdowns, and then progressively it's coming down south by the looks of it, because another part of northern England has been closed down today. I don't know. We just got to work it through and do our best. But for me, it's putting everything on hold has been devastating. And when you're supporting the charity industry, as and I know you've done a lot of very good work in that area, Andrew, it's killing it, because lockdown has impacted on the charity sector by about 25% in terms of downturn in revenues, and charities up and down the country are laying off their staff. I work closely with Cancer Research, and they've reduced their staff by 25%. That's over 500 people in one go. I dread to think what would happen if there's another second wave of this stuff. So I'm doing what I can, and I know that you've always been very, very outgoing and generous when it comes to supporting the charities that you're involved with as well. So I take my hat off to you for that. How have you felt things going forward?
I think the honest answer is that people have adapted. They've adapted this new climate that people talk about, the new normal. Since lockdown, we've been doing this show, and you probably know we've done over 600 interviews since March with the great, the good, and various other people around the world. And what's fascinating, Alex, it gives an insight into a number of things. It gives an insight into how people are dealing with this pandemic in their own country. And there's a big difference between how Australia and New Zealand, how Sweden, how they are dealing with it in the Bahamas, are dealing with that sort of side. It has also introduced a whole new range of heroes, if you like, and Banksy summarized it best in that fantastic picture where they had the child, and in the child's basket they had all the usual heroes. Batman was there, and Superman, and Spider-Woman in the new version. But the child was playing with an NHS nurse, because that was now the new superhero of the era. And I think that sort of summarized it. It's rather similar with the people like Captain, or now Sir Thomas More. Hope he does better than the last Sir Thomas More. But the everyday heroes who are making a real difference. So it's the change of focus. So from that point of view, I think we have come to an extraordinary stage where people are having to reevaluate what was important to them beforehand, but also work out the things. When people talk about the nation's health, they also, wealth and health are so interrelated, because if the entertainment industry doesn't get back on its feet, it's not just those on stage who are affected. It is the technicians, it's the publicity, it's the concessions.
Yeah. Well, for me, I find that interesting, because there's an interesting comparison there. Because if you look at schools, what's taught in schools, the two least taught subjects are music and health, physical fitness. And it is extraordinary that at a time of crisis, as we've been through, that they're the two strongest elements that kept people going. And I find that fascinating, particularly music. And I find the resourcefulness of people during the pandemic in particular. Now things have eased up a little, but just being highly creative in terms of doing virtual shows and virtual gigs, and just working through it. Now that's obviously helping the artists a little bit, but as you say, the impact on the backroom staff, the lighting technicians, the sound engineers, the designers, and all the rest of it, it's having an unbelievable effect. And, we need to get that, continue to get that supported, because without it, I think we're be culturally deprived as a consequence of not having the arts as part of our daily routine.
Oh, absolutely, and it's what I call the Vera Lynn effect. You have to, in times of crisis, have that means of escape. And also what you find is that music and arts, it actually unites people. That this is it is that love of music, the language of love. Play on, you work on that sort of basis. But also, I mean, talking to you, Alex. I mean, I know you, as I say, with many years and many hats on. I know you say you take it off, but many hats on. How do you cope with all those changes? Because you've been through a lot. You've had your own health issues, you've had your own career issues, you've had your passion, which you're now following, which is great. But you then had that dream shattered when lockdown came along. How did you cope yourself? What are those lessons?
The lessons are, you've got to evaluate what's important to you. Money was always a big driver for me, but through the years, it's become less relevant. It does help if you have a little bit. So one's managed to do that through a period of time. But I've been working from home for 20 years, so the new norm that people have had, with millions of people either furloughed or working from home, it must have been quite had an impact on them. And really, we are social creatures. We need to get out there. So for me, I learned my lesson many, many years ago when I had my first cancer, which was Hodgkin's lymphoma. And for me, the lesson I taught myself was to live every day almost as if it's your last, to do what you can, to do the best you can, and just to try and be happy and be positive about whatever circumstance, because in 12 months' time, things will always be different. So you've got to think that the situation you have today, it will not carry on, it will change. And you've just got to get yourself into that way of thinking that encourages you to think that there's something better around the corner. But the important thing is to take action as well. You cannot sit on your backside and hope that things will change. You have to make the change by getting up and doing something. So whether or not, if you're in lockdown, it's getting exercise or listening to music or trying to get out and about or trying to take on a new hobby. I mean, I read an interesting survey yesterday that indicated that with so many people in lockdown, that a lot of people have, because they've got so much time on their hands, and because they're not commuting, that they've taken on baking courses, they've learned a language, they've improved their IT skills, they've read books and self-improvement. That for me is the way to do it. Live today, take some action, and try and improve yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And on this show, I say, in amongst the 600 interviews, we've been having lots of people from every walk of life have been furloughed, and they've been coming on and lifting the kimono, if you like, about their own professions and the secrets. So we've had chess masters on teaching people how to play chess. We had some of the top chefs have come on the show, and my mother was particularly fond of pavlovas, so they taught us the Valerie Eborn perfect pavlova, and I managed to decorate our kitchen with rag everywhere. It was glorious. But those sort of things where people are reinventing, those are the people who are continuing to survive in this difficult stage. There are a lot of people who are sitting at home, and it's very, very difficult for them because they have isolation. They have nobody they're connecting with, they don't have the technology available necessarily, so they can't have these calls over video conferences. Basically, what would you say to them if people are passing on that sort of advice? What should they be doing?
Well, I think they've got to take up some sort of interest. They need to, where it's possible. I mean, I know, for example, a lot of people will have, the nice houses and their gardens and their ability to walk, but they've got to try and do something, maybe try and get out and socialize. They've got to meet people, because this whole insular thing is leading to quite a lot of depression across the country. It is quite a serious issue in that sense. And I would encourage people to try and exercise, to try and read, to communicate, whatever it takes, not to sit there and look at four walls. They have got to do something. And as I said earlier, it is about action. and it is about trying to keep active. I spoke to a guy the other day. He hasn't been particularly well, but he lives in a small flat in Ireland, and he was just going stir crazy. So I encouraged him to get a bicycle, and he's now cycling just about every other day now. So it's improved his health. It's improved his mental well-being. He's communicating now a lot more. It's actually reduced his drinking because that's one of the issues. You know, people are pill popping and people are drinking more. And it's not me saying that. There are the stats out there that are actually underpinning that comment. So, you know, it's about being active. It really is.
Well, they did say when the whole lockdown began, you're going to have one of three things. You'll become either a hunk because you're working out so much, a chunk because you're eating too much, or a drunk because you're drinking too much. So I think you're absolutely right. In the next episode, we're going to talk a bit more about your album and the fantastic cause that's raising money for. But in the meantime, Alex Scott, thank you for being my guest.
It's been a pleasure. Always great to speak to you, Andrew.
Take care. Bye-bye.